This is The Long Road to Publishing, the podcast where we hear from authors who have traveled a long and bumpy road to publishing their books. Whether you're just starting out on your own writing and publishing journey, or if you're all too aware of the many possible detours along the way, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Eva Langston, author, writing instructor, and creator of Eva's newsletter for writers on Substack. Thank you so much for coming along on the ride. I am so thrilled to have my former critique partner, Amy Tern, on the show today. After a very long journey, Amy's debut middle grade novel, Sneaks, is out in the world and has earned a starred Kirkus review. About the novel, Kirkus says, a cracking adventure that also gently examines what it takes to be brave. Beautifully realized, charming, fun, and poignant. In today's episode, we'll talk about the books Amy wrote that didn't get published and how she came up with the incredible premise for Sneaks. Sneaks was published by Holiday House, and since we were a little unsure about the details in our conversation, I just want to say here that Holiday House is not one of the big five publishers, but as far as independent publishers go, it's definitely one of the major ones. It's part of the Walker Books group, which also includes Candlewick Press and Peachtree Publishing, and Holiday House books are distributed by Penguin Random House. So hopefully that clears things up and explains why I always think of Holiday House as a quote-unquote big indie. Like, not big five, but big indie. A quick reminder to rate, review, and subscribe to The Long Road to Publishing. And now on with the episode, which I'm calling Premise-palooza and Hitchcock for Kids. Amy Tern was one of those kids who always wanted to write novels, although she ended up doing a lot of other things first, such as working for international exchange programs and think tanks, living in Japan, and raising two children. This month, Amy's childhood dream is finally coming true with the publication of Sneaks, a middle grade novel from Holiday House. Sneaks received a starred review from Kirkus and has been selected for the Kids Indie Next and the Indies Introduced program. Amy also turned 60 this year, so in a sense, her journey has lasted more than half a century. She lives in Virginia with her husband and her two boys whenever they're home from college. So welcome to The Long Road to Publishing, Amy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Oh, thank you. And we go way back to, I think, maybe like 10 years ago. We were critique partners back when I was writing middle grade and YA. You've kind of stuck with middle grade, but yeah, I think I remember us meeting at a coffee shop, like when I had like a baby or something to go over one of my manuscripts. So it's been a while. That baby now has braces. So, by the time this episode airs, your debut middle grade novel Sneaks will be out in the world. So can you give us a brief elevator pitch to encourage us to go read it or maybe buy it for a child in our lives?
Well, the quick pitch is that the book is a middle grade version of Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, which is one of my favorite movies.
I love that pitch. I love it so much. Okay, well, tell us a little bit more.
Okay, well, it's about two kids who sit on the balcony spying on their neighbors, and they start to see clues, little signs that a crime is taking place in the big apartment building across the alley. And they notice clues that only kids would notice. And just like in Rear Window, Jimmy Stewart is not taken seriously by the police. In my book, the kids are not taken seriously by their parents, who think that they have overactive imaginations and tell them their focus should be on school or practicing piano or whatever. So they end up having to solve the mystery on their own.
Of course, like they always have to do in middle grade. The kids always have to figure it out themselves, right?
Right.
Okay, well, I'm going to have a lot more questions about this novel and how you came up with the idea and wrote it and everything. But, on the show, we always go back in time and we start at the beginning. So when do you feel like, obviously, you've always wanted to be a writer since you were a kid, but when did you feel like you got serious about, I'm going to write a book and get it published?
Yeah, I was one of those kids who was stapling my books together as soon as I was allowed to use the stapler.
Yep.
And then I kept writing all through school and into college. And in college, I took some creative writing classes. It was the workshop format. And it didn't work very well for me. I partly blame it for killing off my desire to write for the next 2 decades.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
I'm kind of joking, but kind of not.
What was it about that workshop model that didn't work well for you and that kind of steered you away from writing for a while?
Well, I think that those sort of classes, they really depend on the instructor. And the instructor for mine was very hands off. So, what it ended up being was a bunch of kids who didn't know anything about writing, pontificating to a bunch of other kids who didn't know anything about writing. And also, the kind of writing that was admired was very literary, experimental, metafictional,
Hmm.
short stories. And it just wasn't a good fit for my type of writing.
Yeah.
So, but the main reason that I put my writing aside was that I graduated from college and I just had to get a job. I had to make a living. So I ended up getting a job with an international exchange program, and I lived in Japan for a couple years, and I got a job at a international think tank in Washington, D.C. And all the time I was writing, I was editing, I was proofreading, I was using words, but it was not fiction. So every once in a while, I would get this really sad feeling when I remembered my childhood dream.
Yeah.
And I met up with a family friend who knew me back when I was a kid. And he said, "Hey, you're not writing books. I thought you would be writing books. You always said that's what you wanted to do." And I got this incredible sinking feeling like, oh no, I forgot to write books.
That's interesting that it like took somebody kind of reminding you of who you had been in that childhood dream to be like, "Oh yeah, I got to do that."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I want to go back to what you said about the workshop class, and I don't know, this is really poignant for me, I think, because I am a writing instructor and sometimes I do these workshop classes, and I feel like it's so important to figure out what type of feedback the person needs. And, are if these are like new beginner writers, kind of like don't crush that little seed before it has a chance to sprout. But I'm just thinking about like there's been times when I've been sitting in a workshop class and some of my students, and these are adult students, will say like really harsh things to their fellow students. And then I'm like, and I try to like temper it because I'm like, don't crush them. This is a first draft. Pros and cons, I guess, to the workshop model. Clearly was not a good fit for you.
Well, I think adults would be better able to, I don't know, they would just be more mature about it. These were all kids. These were 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, and no one hates children's writing more than people
Mm,
who have just left childhood, right?
yeah.
They're reacting against that. They're trying to be grown up. So my kind of writing, it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Although I'm not sure if I agree with you that I mean, adults can be more mature, but not always. Okay, well, so then you had this other career, you're doing all this other types of writing, but not fiction writing. And but then you kind of remembered with this sinking feeling, oh yeah, I always wanted to write a book. So what happened after that?
Well, it really wasn't until I had my own children and was reading to them that I felt reconnected to my own childhood self. And I just got back into it. I remember my youngest son entered preschool, and for the first time, I had 3 hours all to myself. And I could have, done laundry or gone to the store or any
Right.
of these other things. But instead, I really wanted to do something for myself to mark the milestone. And I had a friend who was in the same position. And so I asked her, I said, "What are you going to do with your 3 hours?" And she said, "Oh, I just want to go to the gym and work out." So my reaction was, wow, you and I are very different people, very
Yeah.
different people. So what I started doing was I went to a coffee house and I started just working on a picture book. And I wrote a 2,000 word picture book, rhyming picture book about little creatures living in the forest. And I had no idea that this is not what the industry wants nowadays. It's like the kiss of death, and I had no clue. A friend of mine very kindly suggested that I join SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. So that was pretty good advice, I think.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you, like many parents, were like reading all these picture books and you're like, oh, I'm going to try to write a picture book. Can you explain maybe why the 2000 word rhyming picture book is not what the current market wants?
I can't really explain it. It was the kind of book my kids loved. It was the kind of book that I loved. I'm told that it's not that the kids' attention spans are getting shorter, that it's the parents. The parents don't want to read
Oh,
long picture books.
uh-huh. Okay, I can kind of see that because there are some of my daughter's picture books where I'm like, "Oh gosh, that one." Like I'm like, "You can pick," because she always wants as many as she can get. So she'll be like, "Can I have four?" And I'm like, "You can have four if they're short." So I do kind of get that. But yeah, so there is this big push for short picture books like 500 words, 600 words, right?
Yeah, it just keeps getting fewer and fewer words.
I don't know what the thing is against rhyming, except maybe some people think they're better at rhyming than they actually are. Because I feel like, I don't know, kids like rhyming.
Kids do love rhyming, and I worked really hard. I got a poet to help me. I made sure that the meter was perfect and that it had internal rhyme and all the things. I think part of it is that the industry professionals themselves aren't very familiar with rhyme. They're not,
Oh,
it's
hmm.
hard to work with rhyme. It's hard
Yeah.
to edit it, and it's hard to change it in any way. You pull one thread and the whole thing unravels. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that. Well, and I guess it's harder to, if you're going to publish it in different languages, but you're right. It is harder to change. If you decide to change one word, then that might mean you have to change a bunch of other words. I hadn't thought about it like that. Okay, well, so you had this 2000 word rhyming picture book. You joined SCBWI. Where'd you go from there?
Well, at first I didn't think that they would allow me to join because I thought it was for real writers, and I was happy to find out that's not the case.
Yeah, they let anybody join. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very open. And I started going to conferences and I met a critique group through them. And I also started reading craft books, which were very good for me. I feel like they filled in a lot of those holes that were ignored during the creative writing workshop. I mean, the creative writing workshop I was in, you never mentioned the word plot. It was like dirty word. So I enjoyed reading these craft books and learning all about what makes a good plot and what makes good characters. I learned a lot.
And at that point, were you still pretty focused on picture books? And I guess my other question is, were there craft books about picture books in particular that you were reading?
Well, I pretty quickly moved on to novels. I did write a number of picture books and I got nowhere with them. But I think
Like
that
you were
no,
querying them, the picture books?
yes, I did query them. I
Okay.
did query them, and I think it's very competitive. But I found anyway that novels are just a more natural form for me. When I was growing up, the middle grade, yeah, middle grade, by the way, has nothing to do with middle school. A lot of people are confused by that. It's age 8 to 12.
Yeah. That sweet spot of childhood.
Classic age for children's books. And I was really happy at that period of my life. I was really, I had a strong imagination. I had lots of friends. I was just flourishing. And then the teen years hit, and it was not, not so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
But the middle grade point of my life, I remember it very strongly, which I think is important. If you're going to write middle grade, you should remember being that age.
Yeah.
And I think writing middle grade novels was just what I was meant to do.
So, okay, so pretty quickly you switched over from picture books to writing middle grade novels. Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like I've heard Judy Blume say or read something of her saying like the reason why she wrote so many middle grade novels is she just remembered what it was like to be that age. She just had a very strong memory, which some people do and then some people don't seem to. But yeah, so okay, so then you tried writing middle grade novels. You had a critique group, I'm guessing, by then.
Yes.
And yeah, walk me through where'd you go from there?
Well, I wrote. The first book, it took me a long time. The critique group read the whole thing, and I still remember coming to the end and having completed a full-length manuscript. It was so exciting. There was still plenty ahead of me, lots
Yeah.
of revision in my future that I may not have quite recognized in that moment, but it is a big moment. And I just remember the rush I felt, the excitement. And I think that first project was very special to me. It was kind of like your first love, I felt very special about it, and I really expected something was going to happen with it. I worked on it for about 2 years. I revised it. I had beta readers. There's a character in the book that is a non-native English speaker, and I actually interviewed non-native English speakers from that country so I could get down exactly the sentence structure, the voice. I
Hmm.
worked very hard on that first novel, and I was very excited to query it. And I remember in the very first batch of queries, I got a full request.
Oh, okay.
And I was so excited. I remember thinking to myself, I remember the exact words that were in my head. I thought, this isn't going to be so hard after all.
Oh no.
That was
Yeah.
10 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So yeah, you got the early full request, but then I'm guessing that didn't pan out.
I got a couple of other full requests, but no, nothing, just
Yeah.
rejection. And my instinct was to keep polishing that first novel, to keep improving it, improving it, improving it. But at the conferences that I was attending, I was hearing people say, don't do that. Industry professionals were saying, if you're stuck and you're not meeting success, you should try something new. You should try something different.
Hmm.
And they're not saying don't revise. That's not at all what they're saying. But they're just saying don't get stuck for years in this one project and put all your identity into it.
Yeah. I think that's so true. I think it's such a balance of like, yes, you do need to revise. You can't just, because I think I had the opposite problem when I first started out, where I would write something and I would know it wasn't quite right, but I just didn't know how to make it better. And so then I would just be like, okay, well, let me just write something new and write it better this time. And it took me a while to realize, oh, the way you write something better is by revising, you know? But to your point, then there are people on the other end of the spectrum who are like working on the same book for like a decade. And like you said, putting all their eggs in this one book basket. And at that point, it's just like you have to move on.
I actually really like revision. Some writers don't like it. I actually like it. So I can get stuck in that loop forever if I
Mm.
let myself.
So, yeah, so I guess at what point, like how long had you kind of had you done the querying and you were revising and you've gotten some requests? At what point were you like, oh gosh, I think I need to put this away and work on something else? Do you remember?
I think it was about 3 years.
Yeah.
It took me close to 3 years just it took me about 2 years just to write the thing
Hmm.
because I'm a kind of a slow writer. And then it was about another year of querying before I finally gave up on that
Yeah.
project.
I don't know, 2 years for your first novel, that doesn't, that seems reasonable to me. I'm like, I don't know that that's necessarily super slow.
So then I thought, I'll try something different. This new novel is going to be great. It's going to have more action, more humor, no dead mother. Because a lot of the industry professionals in middle grade, they're really tired of dead mothers. Middle grade manuscripts have a lot of dead mothers.
Yeah, and orphans. Yeah. Well, but it's because I think, because of what we were saying earlier, that it's like the kids have to solve the mystery, or the kids have to like figure the thing out on their own. And it's like, oh, well, if there's parents, then wouldn't they just go to their parents for help? So it's like, oh, we got to get the parents out of the way, you know?
Yeah. So I started writing the first draft and I felt really good about this book too. I think when you write your first draft, you have to feel really confident. You have to feel like I am writing something brilliant because otherwise you would just stop, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because it's really not a very useful way to spend your time. So you have to be on fire, very confident. So I wrote this novel and put it out in the world, and I actually got fewer full requests than I did with my first
Um,
novel and more rejections. So I think this was when I was closest to giving up because I felt like I was sliding backward, and
Yeah.
that's not how I wanted to feel.
When was this? Do you remember like around what year it was that you were querying this next one?
This novel would have been about 2018, I think.
Okay. The reason why I ask is I just feel like I saw things like since from the time when I started querying to now, I just feel like things have gotten harder. And I don't know if it's like there's more information available for people for of how to query, so more people are querying, and agents have like a bigger slush pile. And I can see how you thought like, oh, I'm going backwards, but to me, I'm like, I think that maybe the publishing industry was just getting harder to break into.
One thing I do notice is that people don't get back to you now.
Yeah.
'Cause I've been querying a long time, and even from when I started querying, I can see the difference.
Yeah.
They don't even send you a form rejection.
Yeah.
They it's just
But
nothing.
I think part of that is because there's just so much, like they're just so inundated now. Well, and now they have to deal with like AI stuff in their inboxes too. And so, but I can see how at the time you felt like, oh gosh, like I thought I was doing something better and now I'm getting fewer requests. And so, how do you feel like you found the gumption to keep going after that?
I think it was mostly my critique group that kept me going because, first of all, they were in the same position.
Yeah.
And it was just really fun to have someone read what I was writing and be into it and excited about it and giving me feedback on it. So I think that was enough to keep me going.
Yeah, and you were like, well, I need to write something for my critique group, even if it doesn't go out to agents. Yeah, I could see that. And at that point, was anybody from your critique group starting to get agents or anything like that? Or were you still a group of pre-published authors?
Well, the critique group is pretty interesting. We've had all kinds of people. We have one member who's into self-publishing,
Mm-hmm.
and she is really succeeding. She hustles all the time. And then I have another friend who got an agent, went on submission. The book died on submission, and then she lost her agent, and now she is self-publishing that manuscript.
Oh, okay.
And then we've had lots of people come and go who just do other things. Like one woman who is very talented, she ended up becoming a minister in her church instead. Lots of really interesting, nice people.
Well, okay, so then we're now two manuscripts, still no agent. Where'd you go from here?
So I wrote my third novel, and it was kind of a breakthrough for me. What happened was, again, my critique group really came through for me. All of us were between projects, and one of the members said, you know, it's December. We don't write much during December anyway, because we all had families, kids. And she said, why don't we do a premise-palooza?
I love
So we're all like,
it.
what's a premise-palooza? And she said, every day for 15 minutes, that's all, we'll just generate ideas.
hmm
We won't write at all. We'll just generate ideas for our next project. And I am not good at coming up with ideas for novels. I am not one of those people who have a file folder full of 100 ideas that, I want to get to. It's always a struggle for me. So I thought I would be really bad at it, and I was. But I found that, in fact, I generated more than 100 premises, and most of them were bad. I got my kids involved, and I
Oh,
stole their
fun.
ideas. Most of their ideas were good. But at the end, we winnowed it down to 10 ideas that we were excited about writing, and we wrote a pitch paragraph for each one.
Oh, this is such a great idea. I love it. Okay, keep going. So you whittled it down to 10, wrote a paragraph pitch for each one. Uh-huh.
So the rear window idea was one of those.
Okay.
Another one, someday I want to write The Bridge on the River Kwai for
Mhm.
middle graders.
I mean, so, I taught this class recently about how to catch and keep a reader, and one of the things is to just come up with a really quick, easy, hooky premise like Rear Window for middle grade. But one of the ways is just thinking about like all your favorite movies and TV shows and books and being like, how could I put a spin on that? And of course, since you write middle grade, it's like, how could I write something like that for middle grade? But you could also be like, how could I write that but make it sci-fi? Or how could I write that but, put it in a different time and place in history.
Yeah, I listened to your to that essay that you wrote on Substack.
Hmm.
You had a video version of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I
How to
have a
catch and keep a reader.
I'll have to link to that in the show notes. But yeah, I have a couple of different ways that you can brainstorm a bunch of different fun premises. But anyway, but yeah, so I think that's a great idea because before you even get started on a whole book length project, it's like, well, wait a minute, let me brainstorm the very best idea that I can and, then see if it has legs. So I love that idea. That's a great suggestion for people to try, especially when they're in between projects.
Well, I was hearing this term, high concept,
Yep.
and it actually took me a long time to understand what that even meant. And what helped me is to think about those days back before the internet, where if you wanted to watch a movie, you would get out the newspaper and you would go to the entertainment section and start paging through the entertainment section. And different people would be looking at different parts and say, hey, how about this one? And they would throw out a one sentence description, and it either grabbed you or it didn't.
Yep.
So, for example, you might say, oh, here's a movie called Ghostbusters. Seems to be some kind of Scooby-Doo for grown-ups or whatever.
Yeah.
Or oh, Back to the Future. This guy goes back to help his parents fall in love. And those movies, like just the one sentence is enough that you feel this pull, this curiosity, and all the potential of that idea starts sort of blossoming in your mind, and you see all the different places that premise could go. And, if your friend said something like, oh, apparently this movie has beautiful cinematography, or this movie has really good characters, it's very well written according to the experts, you don't feel that pull.
Yeah. No, I mean you're absolutely right. If you're a newer writer and somebody says like, "Oh, what's your book about? What are you writing about?" And you're like, "Oh, well, I'm trying to write beautifully, trying to write beautiful sentences." Like, okay. But if you have that hooky premise, you can still write the beautiful sentences. You can still write it however you want, but then it's going to make people want to read it with that hooky premise.
I heard on the radio an interview with the guy who created the movie Joker,
Mm,
and his name is Todd Phillips. And he said that what he was really interested in doing was exploring the idea of mental illness, to do a deep dive into a character with mental illness, to explore how we should not be cutting social services to these people. But in order to make the movie happen, he decided to give it the premise, the Joker's origin story.
yep.
So he made it the Joker's origin story. And that was how he got funding. How he got people's attention. But he put in all the stuff about the mental illness that he had wanted to in the first place. And that's what gives the movie depth. And that's why it won all those awards. So I think if you have some kind of snappy premise, people come for the premise, but they'll stay for the characters or the ideas or the writing. That's what they'll remember, and that's what will move them.
Yeah. Well, it's reminding me of, I interviewed Rebecca Lehman, who wrote The Beheading Game, which is, okay, now listen to this premise because it's incredible. You may have heard it. Anne Boleyn wakes up the day after her beheading, sews her head back on, and goes to seek vengeance on Henry VIII, which is
Yeah,
like,
you talked about that in the webinar. That was so
yeah.
interesting.
But when I talked to her, she was like, well, I've always been fascinated by Anne Boleyn and I wanted to write about Anne Boleyn, but I wanted to do something that hadn't been done before. And how do I get into the, historical narrative? And then she thought of this premise. So it's like she could have just written, a historical fiction kind of based on Anne Boleyn. And there's so much of that is in there. I mean, there's all these flashbacks to her life and how Henry VIII courted her and everything. But the thing that gets people to the book in the first place is the premise, right? So she's still able to like write this beautiful, poetic, historical novel about Anne Boleyn, but it gets the attention because of the premise. So yeah, I think and that your Joker example is amazing too.
It's easy to talk about this like it's some kind of game, and I think it's important not to get too cynical. The premise has to be something you are genuinely excited about.
Yes. somebody could say like, oh, well, this is what people want. They want a high concept here's a high concept premise. But if they don't have the passion for the deeper themes of what they want to write about, or they don't have the passion for it, yeah, that's not going to work. Because I do believe that people come for the premise, but there has to be something to keep them there, right?
Right.
Okay, your Sneaks premise is incredible. You were clearly excited about it. Were you an Alfred Hitchcock fan or a Rear Window fan to begin with?
Yes, I was very much, very
Okay,
much.
well, so there you go. There's the passion.
There are so many scenes in that movie that were so interesting, and I wanted to do them a different way.
Yeah.
Like, for example, there's that scene where Grace Kelly goes across into the danger zone. And Jimmy Stewart, he can't leave the apartment because he's got that enormous cast on his leg. And
Right.
he's immobilized, and he has to watch her go into danger, and he feels helpless. And I wanted to write that scene, but I wanted to write it from the other point of view as well, from her point of view. So that was one thing I did. I wrote about that scene also from the girl's point of view, Valerie, when she crosses over into the danger zone.
Okay, so yeah, well, tell me a little bit more about your experience of writing Sneaks. And it sounds like so it was a dual POV narrative between the boy and the girl.
Yes, which
Okay.
was very challenging. I don't know why I did that. I'd never done anything like that before, but it just seemed to make sense for that novel.
Yeah.
And a lot of the reviewers seem to like that these characters are so different. They come from different economic backgrounds, and they're a bit of an odd couple friendship. Valerie is much more brave and brash and gets into a lot of trouble. And Rook is more of a good kid. She calls him, and her term for good kids is asparagus eaters.
That's very middle grade. That's such a middle grade voice thing. I love it.
Yeah, so it was very important to differentiate the voices, which I think is
Yeah.
a hard part, right, of writing more than one perspective.
Were they both first person or were they third person close?
My original idea was to have Valerie be all first person and Rook be all third person, which happens. I mean, there are novels like that.
Hmm.
But I was told that young readers, especially, would get confused. So they're both third person. But I feel like because I wrote a lot of chapters in first person for Valerie, even though I changed it to close third person, there's something about the writing is just different. It's different because it was originally written in first person. So that's kind of a hack that I discovered.
Yeah, so one of the things that I always think about with close third that I think takes a while for people to realize is that you can still have that voice. You can still have like words that that person would use and kind of the voiciness, even though it's in third person, because especially if it's close, you're in their head, you're getting their thoughts. So I wonder if I think that would be a really interesting writing exercise to write something in first person and then switch it over to close third and keep some of that voiciness. And then it helps distinguish between the two POVs as well.
Yeah, it was very subtle. It was very subtle.
Yeah.
And she is more voicey, and also she is very visual.
Mm.
For example, what Rook would call a hat, she calls a fedora
Ah,
because she knows that it's a fedora. He doesn't know that. Also, he uses his ears because he's a musician. So he listens to the world. He hears the way different spaces sound different, or he hears certain qualities of silences that are different from other silences. And so that also just, helped differentiate the voice.
I like that idea too of like one character is more, it's kind of like what do they notice? What are they noticing about the world? So you can have two characters in the same space, but they're noticing different things about it. And that kind of informs their perspective and informs their character. I really like that.
And also in how they solve the mystery. They each contribute in their own ways to solve the mystery.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Had you ever tried to write a mystery before?
Yes, I had. There are different kinds of mysteries. This mystery is more of a thriller mystery. I had previously written a fair play mystery, which I was very proud of. Fair play is like Agatha Christie, where all the clues are there and the reader is given access to all the clues. But a more thriller type mystery like Rear Window, it's not like that. You just along for the ride, and
Hmm.
the suspense is the thing.
I had never heard that term fair play mystery. I like the distinction. Like what in one you're given all the clues and the other you're just kind of along for the ride. And I think thrillers kind of have more of like the twists that you didn't see coming. So tell me about you wrote Sneaks and then how did it go with the revision and with the querying and all of that?
So I started querying Sneaks in 2023. All right. So it's just coming out now. That's how long it's taken.
Yep.
I got a few requests and I got an agent. And after that, it went on submission for about 6 months.
Okay.
So it went out on 3 rounds.
In within those 6 months were three different rounds.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And the editor who ultimately made an offer was in the first round. So she just didn't get around to reading it. And we didn't hear from her till 6 months later when the third round had already gone out.
Okay. Was it had you gotten sort of some nibbles from other editors and were able to give her a nudge, or was it just that's how long it had taken her to get to it?
We didn't get, you wouldn't call them nibbles. We did get feedback. We got encouraging feedback. People would say, "Oh, I really like this, and I really like this, but I don't like this, and I just don't feel I can sell this book."
Yeah.
So it was very discouraging.
Well, and I've also heard from other middle grade authors on this podcast that middle grade is just incredibly hard to sell right now. Like it's just there's well, and like some children's imprints have closed, I know. So there's like fewer editors to send it to. And so it's very exciting that you were able to first book out on submission, able to get a book deal. I mean, that's huge. Yeah, so you've got this editor now at Holiday House, and what's the process been like since then?
It's been good. I made a deal with my kids that when my book got published, we would have ice cream for breakfast. So it actually took so many years that they forgot all about it.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, we're gonna have ice cream for breakfast." And they're like, "What?" They're teenagers, so yeah. But anyway, it was very exciting. My editor is very good. Her name is Sally Morgridge, and I was impressed by the editing because I had read so many middle grade that is very bloated and baggy, and I thought, no one is editing these books. But she really took me in hand, and she cut a few thousand words off. I'm a very tight writer. I'm obsessed with omitting unnecessary words. My kids
Yeah.
will tell you I'm always on them for this. So they got a lot of delight out of seeing me get a taste of my own medicine.
Yeah.
And she also helped me, know what the manuscript needed and bring certain characters back more fully and gave me lots of advice.
Do you remember what the final word count was for Sneaks?
I think the final word count is more than 48,000 and change.
Okay. I remember back a long time ago when I was writing middle grade and I was really struggling to get that like 50,000, words because I tend to write I'm an overwriter. So yeah, so being able to pare back and be like, what do I really need? And I wonder if I ever go back to writing for that age group. I think I've learned a lot since then of just kind of trusting the reader of like, you don't need to see them on the school bus going to school. Like you can just have them at school, the thing that's important happening. There's
Right.
so much that like I think I just had filler that I didn't really need. And you can kind of think of it like a movie, like, oh, just cut to the next scene, cut to the important part.
Yeah, I think fiction writing is getting more and more cinematic.
Yeah.
And that's one part of it is you do the jump cut.
Yeah. And the readers are used to that. They can go with you. You don't have to say like the next day she woke up and went to school. Like just we're there. Chapter 2, she's at school already.
Right. And
So,
you can weave in backstory
yeah.
to fill in the gaps. You don't need to write everything.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, so now Sneaks is coming out. By the time this podcast is out, it will be out in the world. Are you doing anything special to celebrate besides the ice cream for breakfast?
It's just coming out in the middle of summer. It's very busy, very busy.
Yeah.
I am having a party with friends and family. I'm going to two different book clubs, kids' book clubs. I've been invited.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I've also gotten this honor called Indies Introduce. It's only for debut writers. And the American Booksellers Association is having a conference in Chicago, and I get to go to that and talk to the booksellers.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess because Holiday House is technically an indie, even though it's a big indie, right? Is that right?
I don't know. It's been I'm a little foggy, But Holiday House is the oldest publishing company devoted to children's literature only.
Oh,
And it's been
okay.
around a long time.
Yeah.
They've been great, and I've gotten a lot of support, and my editor has been great. I've
Yeah.
lost my agent, though.
Oh
My agent left
no.
the business.
Oh my gosh. And when did that happen along the way?
She left pretty much right after she sold my book.
Oh my
So I'm glad
gosh.
she did it after she sold my book and not before. But yeah, so I'm back querying. I've revised my second novel and I'm back in the querying trenches.
Oh gosh. Well, so first of all, it's like how very like publishing that you get like good news and bad news simultaneously. It's like, yay, I have a book deal. Oh no, I have to get a new agent. But I'm hoping, and I don't know if you started the query process yet, but I'm hoping that maybe now with a published novel, you'll at least maybe move up to the top of the stack of queries. I guess we'll keep our fingers crossed.
I hope so, but they still have to love the book.
Well, that's true.
I'm also working on a new project, and it's funny, I feel a certain pressure I didn't feel before, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm trying to keep the joy.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about that a little bit more. What's the pressure you're feeling all of a sudden that you didn't expect?
It's just I've had a book out. And so it just sort of puts you in a different place. I feel much more judgmental of my own writing.
Mm,
I
hmm.
just feel like I know now what it's like to have an editor. I feel the editor looking over my shoulder. I'm just not in the same place I was when I was, oh, I'll go out while my kids are in preschool and be creative and
Right.
enjoy the process. I'm trying to keep that joy, keep that happiness in the process. And then even if no one ever likes this new novel and it doesn't succeed, at least I've had the privilege of writing it.
Yeah. Well, what is something that has surprised you on your whole writing and publishing journey? And it can be a good surprise or a not so good surprise or one of each.
I didn't think it would take this long. I really never dreamed it would be this hard or take this long. I told you how I started writing again when I put my youngest in preschool for the first time. And now he's going to college in the fall. So kids grow up much faster than books, just like C.S. Lewis says. So I guess that would be the unpleasant surprise. The pleasant surprise, like a lot of your guests have said, the community has been amazing. People in children's book publishing, especially, are really nice. Other writers have supported me. I support them.
Yeah.
And also just the quality of the editing, as I said, the quality of the editing has been really good.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And I'm glad that, for your debut, you had a really good experience with your editor and everything. Well, and I want to ask you too, because I know you have your critique group that you've had for a long time, but I know speaking of community, you also have this other group that you meet in person with other writers. Do you want to tell about that and how that started?
Yeah, for the critique group, you had a previous guest, Shanna
Hmm.
Upchurch,
Hmm.
and she spoke about critique groups. I can't improve on what she said. I just encourage your listeners, if they haven't already, to listen to that episode. But this coffee club that I have is a different sort of thing. There is no critiquing, there's no homework. It's just purely social because writing can be a very solitary experience. And I think I'm an introvert, but I have an extroverted side. And I did like being out in the working world and having lunch with people and meeting people and all that. And with writing, you can go a little nuts if you don't talk to other writers. So we throw out ideas. Sometimes we talk about difficulties that we're having and we get advice from the other people there, or we just share stories. We're all at all different levels of the process.
And this is, you guys meet up like once a month at a coffee shop. And is it writers of all different age groups and genres?
It started out being children's book writers, but it's gotten a lot bigger. We have a romance writer. We have my friend I was telling you who's very into self-publishing. We have people who are just starting out. They're just writing for themselves, just for
Yeah.
fun. We have one person who's very into puppetry, and she produces puppet shows. So we have all different kinds, all different ages, also.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great that you have your critique group for the critiques, but then you have this more social kind of free form, like let's talk about just all the different things that come up in the writing and creative life. So I think that's great. Well, okay. So I end every episode with a tip for the road for our listeners. And it can be a tip about writing or publishing or anything else that you want to impart. So what is the tip that you want to give to us today?
I think my tip is that we are all very busy, and there's a temptation to wait until life gives you time to write. Oh, I'm going to write a book someday when I have time. But the truth is that life never gives you time. You have to steal it. You have to take time, and you have to run away with it to somewhere where no one can find you. And if you think about it that way, I think it's easier. Sure,
Yeah.
you have, small children, but someday you may have aging parents. There's always some demand on your time. There's always something. So you have to just take the time.
Yes.
You deserve it.
Oh, I love that. Yes, that's right. Take it. You deserve it. Your creativity is important. Yeah, because I do think a lot of times people will say, "Oh, well, my writing, that's the bottom of the list." And it's like, no, make the time for it, make it important. And I don't know, personally for me, when I haven't written for a while, I am not my best self. So I'm like, I need that time so that I can be a better parent and have a more well-balanced life. So, yeah.
I heard that Isaac Asimov got anxious whenever he was away from his typewriter for 3 hours.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not like that, but
But he wasn't in charge of small children or working another job or any of that.
yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, Amy, thanks so much for being here. I was so excited when I realized that you had a book coming out, and I was like, oh, Amy, I remember reading, works in progress of yours many, many years ago. So I'm really happy that you stuck with it and that now we can all go and read Stakes.
Yes, and I want to tell your listeners too that they have more time than they think.
Yes, I love that. All right. Well, we'll end with that. And thank you so much for being here today.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Long Road to Publishing. Many of the books we discuss on the podcast can be found at my bookshop shop, the link for which is in the show notes. My guests' books and many of the resources we discuss on the show can also be found in the show notes. You can find me online on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack with the handle Eva Langston. Even better, subscribe to my free newsletter for writers at evalangston.substack.com and feel free to send me an email. The podcast address is longroad.pub@gmail.com. The Long Road to Publishing is produced and edited by me, Eva Langston, and the intro-outro music comes from the artist Soundroll on Upbeat. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and I'll be back soon with more publishing stories and more tips for the road.